American farmers are bracing for some big changes under President Trump's new immigration policy.
If workers like this keep on leaving, this business and many more like it across the state of Alabama could well go under.
No more sound of tractors, no more cheer from sowing season. Just the wind blowing across fields overtaken by weeds where golden waves of wheat corn and soybeans were supposed to be. In 2025, thousands of farmers across America are doing what no one ever imagined letting the land die. No planting, no harvest, no notice to the government. And they don't need to say a word because their silence is screaming. They're not quitting agriculture. They're rejecting a system that no longer protects them. Think it's just a few small-town farmers. Think again. This is a quiet rebellion spreading across 10 of America's most important agricultural states. And if you think it won't touch your life, check that bag of bread you just bought. The price just went up and it's not done rising because the people who grow it have gone silent and America is about to feel the consequences. This isn't a natural disaster, it's a land strike. There's nothing wrong with the soil. It's not that the rain didn't come, and yet the fields are empty and they'll stay that way. Not because of drought or disaster, but because people have chosen silence as their protest. This isn't an isolated incident anymore. It's a full-blown strike of the land happening across America. In 2025, farmers no longer look at their land the way they used to. The excitement of counting down to planting season is gone. Now they see their fields as negative numbers. The more they plant, the deeper they sink. Fertilizer prices have skyrocketed. Equipment is aging and expensive to maintain. The price they get for their crops doesn't cover the cost of growing them. It's a vicious cycle that turns planting into financial suicide, so they make a choice to stop planting, to let the fields dry under the sun. Better that than drowning in debt. Anyone who thinks this is just a few lone farmers doesn't understand what's happening. In heartland states like Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas, entire networks of small farms have quietly bowed out. No applications for seasonal support, no seed orders, no labor contracts. They've simply stopped. No slogans. No rallies, but their silence is louder than any protest chant. What's terrifying is how fast that silence is spreading. When one farming community stops, the entire supply chain begins to crack. Mills run out of grain. Co-ops can't meet their quotas. Logistics grind to a standstill, waiting for harvests that never come. And eventually consumers start noticing in higher prices and empty shelves in the eerie quiet of things no longer arriving. Farmers aren't the protesting type. But when no one stands up for them, no policy, no relief, no one listening an empty field becomes their final message. They're not walking away because they're lazy. They're walking away because they were backed into a corner. And when the land no longer grows, America needs to ask itself how many more harvests have to die before the system realizes this is a cry for help, spoken in the only language farmers have left. The land itself is speaking, and we'd better start listening. When the government cuts, farmers stop a silent pact, painfully loud. Farmers didn't say a word, they just stopped planting. That simple act, quiet on the surface, was the loudest message they could send to the government. We've lost faith. No need for protests, no flags burned, no slogans. Just empty fields, and the silence says it all. When the government slashes support programs, delays crop insurance payouts, and pulls back low-interest loans, the first thing farmers do is kill the engine, because they know if they plant, there's no safety net. And if the crop fails, there's no way out. There used to be an unspoken deal farmers would grow and the system would make sure they didn't go bankrupt. But when that guarantee was erased by budget cuts, shifting priorities, and delayed relief checks, that deal collapsed. And once it's broken, farmers no longer feel bound to hold up their end. No one warned them. No one told them the money was gone. They only found out when their name disappeared from the assistance list. No explanation. No alternative plan. No one from the government ever came out to ask, can you still afford to plant? So they gave no answer. They just quietly stepped away from the land. The bitter part. This isn't the first time. For years, farmers have lived in the gray zone of policymaking, left out of the conversations, left out of the protections, and left behind. And now with fertilizer, fuel, and every input cost soaring, they're stranded in the middle of the field, shouldering all the risk. Instead of harvesting, they face debt notices, bank warnings, and the looming threat of losing their land. When the government cuts, they stop. No arguments, no negotiations, just a cold, calculated withdrawal. Because if taxpayer dollars can vanish overnight, then so can the seeds. They stay in the bag. It's balance, a wordless agreement. but one that's painfully clear. What's scarier is this: when farmers stop, the entire food chain stops with them. No crops, no processing. No processing stores run short. Then city dwellers feel the impact of empty fields through price tags, back-ordered items, and meals that suddenly rely on whatever ingredients left on the shelf. This stoppage is no longer in the farmer's hands. It's now a domino effect, the unraveling of a system once built by the very people now being forced out. And soon the average American will start to ask, why did my loaf of bread double in price? Why is cereal suddenly out of stock? The answer isn't a global storm or distant disaster. It lies in a quiet office where a few subsidy lines were cut, and in a western field where the tractor never started. No one said they would stop, but when they did, we all finally saw this wasn't an isolated act. It was the declaration of a forgotten class, and when American farmers decide they're done planting, America will reap something it never saw coming. If planting means dying, then maybe it's better the seed never touches soil. The bitter choice of the sour. Beneath the once rich soil where seeds used to thrive lies a bitter truth that many farmers never thought they'd face planting to lose. Planting to bleed money. Planting to go deeper into debt. Some even say if they're going to plant knowing full well they'll walk away with nothing, then it's better to let the seeds die in the bag rather than suffer the heartbreak of another failed harvest. Land used to mean promise. Now it just means pressure. Fertilizer and diesel have doubled in price over the past few years, but corn, soy, and wheat prices haven't followed. Farmers might tolerate high costs if they had even a chance at breaking even, but when the selling price can't cover the cost of growing, every seed planted feels like financial suicide, one row at a time. Some even joke between planting to lose and not planting at all, they'd rather stay out of the game, because planting without contracts, without guaranteed buyers, is like throwing money into a pit. But deeper than the financial pain is what it does to their dignity, their sweat, their pride, their belief in the craft. When planting no longer brings life, it becomes an act of surrender, as if they're giving up the right to call themselves farmers. You can see the pressure building across the Midwest. In Nebraska, many small farms skip the spring season entirely. No calls to seed dealers, no bookings for combines, no techs scheduled for tractor checks. Instead, they pulled the gate shut on the green field and let the sun dry it up. Down in the Missouri River Valley, hundreds of acres lie untouched, entire seasons left sleeping. No bids, no land auctions, no races for leases. Just silence, and the system is starting to notice. Those lucky enough to still have some capital are keeping the land idle, waiting for policies to change. Planting now only to lose later means losing not just crops, but manpower, soil, and spirit. For farmers, every seed that goes into the ground without producing a harvest isn't just lost income, it's a wound. They no longer feel in control. Farming has turned into a coin toss, and when every economic storm hits them first, not playing the game has become the only way to protect what's left, even if it hurts. Not planting is a way to protect their assets. The land stays intact. The machinery doesn't wear down. The payroll doesn't grow. If the fields remain fallow, at least the foundation for a comeback is still there. But plant without a contract, all they get is a debt notice and the risk of losing the very farm they once cultivated. And this isn't just happening in forgotten rural corners. In Iowa, one large farm owner who had previously supplied a local processing plant said, "I skipped the summer crop. Who knows what it'll be like? Soybean prices are sinking. No help with fertilizer. I feel like I'm gambling in a game where the house always wins." So why play? They're not rebelling against the government. They're not asking for handouts. They're simply asking for a baseline, stable contracts, transparent policies, and input costs they can plan around. Without that planting, isn't hope it's a leap off a cliff. Today, what's being planted isn't seed. It's discontent, broken trust, and a quiet declaration. This season, I can't risk it. They plant their message through silence, letting the land speak, making it clear to the system, if you don't protect us, we're out. Fallow fields may look scenic from afar, grass growing wild, no humans in sight, but beneath that image is an earthquake waiting to be understood. Don't assume farmers will always keep planting, because when not planting becomes the final statement of the season, the system will learn this isn't just about waiting for new policies. It's about facing the truth. When land goes unused, it means the system has failed the very people it was built for. And when farmers stop sowing, America will face a harsh new image: empty grocery shelves, rising bills, and millions of livelihoods left behind, while fields quietly wither in the sun. This isn't a distant future. It's already happening, starting with land that was never greened again. Every fallow acre is a vote of no confidence without a ballot box. Every acre left unplanted, every seed never given a chance to grow, is a ballot cast against the system, not through a political vote, but through a simple, unmistakable act: I no longer believe in your promises. This is an unconscious economic retreat. It's a strategic form of resistance. And the only thing left speaking for them now is the land. Look at Pennsylvania, where many farmers left dozens of acres of corn untouched because they couldn't secure a contract. Journalist Jamie Dupree once interviewed a farm owner who flatly refused to plant without clear commitments. He said the system had broken its word. No contract, no planting. Simple as that. No speeches, just action. In Idaho, many small farms are letting grass take over where soybeans used to grow. Input costs, fertilizer, pesticides, fuel have risen more than 40% in just 2 years, not counting labor. Imagine choosing to leave the land idle rather than risk another loss. Their message is silent but clear. They won't carry the burden if policy remains vague and markets unpredictable. This is a vote that doesn't need a polling place. The action says it all. Rural life has long been tied to local politics, coffee shop debates, county votes. But these fields don't talk like that anymore. They're silent but heavier than words. They strike directly at the problem. If policy doesn't change, if markets aren't guaranteed, these acres will remain still. In Michigan, after the state government pulled promised environmental funding for small farmers, more than 20 farms publicly opted out of summer planting programs. No speeches, no marches, just a clear, deliberate refusal. Their fallow land is proof they no longer believe the system will protect the small grower. In Wisconsin, a 2024 report from the state's Department of Agriculture revealed that up to 15% of farmland owned by family operations didn't register with co-ops that year. They declined to supply anything, not because they couldn't grow, but because they no longer trusted the process. This rebellion isn't loud, but it's shaking the system at its core. What's remarkable is that they're not waiting for a new policy. They're not hoping for the next election. They're acting now, using land as their ballot. A ballot of frustration, a ballot of choice, a ballot of survival. So when thousands of acres across 10 key states, from Nebraska to Texas, from Iowa to Florida, sit untouched, it's no longer a seasonal statistic. It's a summary of a broken pact between growers and government. No care, no planting. Those fields become doors slammed shut on the marketplace. And as the market closes piece by piece, consumers begin to feel it through rising bills, rising prices, and disappearing goods. That's the power of the silent vote. No election needed, no flags, no slogans. Just stop planting. Stop selling. The system will be forced to respond. If it doesn't by next year, it'll realize the silence wasn't apathy. It was producers choosing not to participate anymore, because the system no longer pays them what they're worth. And by then, the government won't be able to look at the state of the nation without also looking at those abandoned fields, the undeniable signs of a protest that spread across the country, without casting a single vote. The domino effect. When growers step back, shoppers pay the price. It only takes one failed season in a major region for the entire supply chain to react. Processing plants run out of inputs, equipment sits idle without contracts, storage silos remain empty, grocery stores lack products. And in the end, consumers pay the price out of pocket. The moment farmers stop planting, shortages stop being a warning, they become reality. In states like Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas, once the beating heart of global corn and wheat production, food processors are now reporting raw material shortages. Many co-ops are placing orders from as far away as Mildura, Australia, or Odessa, Ukraine. That doesn't just raise transportation costs, it slows everything down: late arrivals, empty shelves, higher prices. In just 6 months, reports from Chain Store Age recorded flour prices jumped 15 to 30%. Breakfast cereal climbed 35%. This isn't market speculation, it's the direct result of real supply gaps in domestic production. Working-class families in suburbs like Phoenix and Detroit are paying an extra $10 or $15 per week just to keep up with basic groceries, and many are trimming their food lists just to stay within budget. Small bakeries and budget cafes are adjusting the only way they can by raising prices per item, by $0.50 to $2 or shrinking portions. Some shop owners say if things don't change, they may have to shut down in just a few months. According to the National Restaurant Association, as many as 38% of independent restaurants are at risk of not surviving the summer of 2025. That's alarming because when city dwellers lose access to affordable meals, society loses vital economic links in the food chain. And it doesn't stop with restaurants. The ripple effect hits schools and hospitals too. Institutional kitchens are switching to cheaper, filler-heavy ingredients, more additives, less fiber. Rand Corporation found that poor nutrition reduces academic performance by 3 to 5%. In Texas and Florida, hospitals reported 8-11% spikes in midday admissions linked to digestive issues and dehydration, the consequence of unbalanced meals. If you think this only affects the middle class, think again. Low-wage workers, seasonal laborers, delivery drivers, part-time students are getting hit hardest. They're spending more just to get a halfway decent breakfast, but the trade-off is less gas money or missed utility bills. One delivery driver put it bluntly, he now has to choose between buying a sandwich or fueling up for the day. Nothing happens in isolation. When farmers walk off the land, processors lose supply. Restaurants can't fill menus. Schools cut portions, and every link in the chain suffers. That pain flows upward to the consumer. A system built to run smoothly begins to fall apart the moment its foundation, the farmer, breaks down. Today, prices aren't just numbers on a chart. They show up in grocery bills and a child's breakfast, and the difficult choices small businesses make about what to serve. It all started with a decision not to plant like a 500-acre corn farm in Kansas that's now covered in weeds, simply because no one agreed to buy the crop in advance, and storage costs were higher than the grain was worth. And here's the bigger question: if the system can't earn back farmers' trust, if policies don't give them a path to grow without risking bankruptcy, the supply chain will only become more fragile. Consumers will keep paying more stores will close, more families will have to choose between food and rent. Every idle acre will hit the system like a shockwave. This isn't one bad season, it's multiple. And with every failed harvest, another link is lost, and it's urban Americans far from the fields who feel the blow first. In the end, the greatest damage isn't just in price. It's in lost trust and food security quietly being replaced by daily anxiety. That's when families stop asking, "How much does bread cost today?" and start asking, "Will bread even be on the shelf tomorrow?" In that quiet shift, the entire system is whispering a warning. If the sowers are gone, who will protect the nation's next meal? 10 states, thousands of fields, when silence becomes outrage. You can drive through a small town in Kansas and see the fields stretch endlessly toward the horizon, but not in green, not in crops. Just dry, bare earth. Not because of drought, but because the hands that once planted have chosen to stop. This isn't a blip. It's spreading like a stain across at least 10 states. And when farmers go quiet in unison, it's no longer exhaustion, it's a form of rebellion. They're not marching in the streets. They're not sending angry letters. They're simply stopping the planting, stopping the sign-ups, stopping the hope. Every idle acre is a quiet but pointed message. We're too tired to carry a system that no longer carries us. In agriculture's heartland, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, farmers are walking away from wheat because there's no money in it anymore. With prices dropping below $5 per bushel, planting means losing more than they keep. And what they're losing isn't just money, it's trust. When subsidies are delayed and input costs spiral out of control, they realize their land is no longer an asset. It's a burden begging to be abandoned. In the Northeast, corn and soybean growers in Pennsylvania and Maine are responding in their own way, letting grass take over. No mowing, no cleanup. Each of these fields is a statement we are no longer part of the supply chain, we've been left behind. That apathy isn't surrender. It's the hardest choice of all made after policies broke their promises and trust was quietly erased. The silence has reached Wisconsin, Michigan, Idaho states with proud traditions of raw crop farming. Here, growers have stopped registering their output with co-ops. They don't need to say anything. It's the absence of information that terrifies the system most, because when no one reports in it means no one believes they matter in the national production picture anymore. The chain reaction has begun: store shelves thinning out, processors struggling for inputs, supply chains stalling without a sound. And when shoppers start asking why flour and cereal prices are spiking, they won't see the farmers who stopped planting, but they'll feel the effects with every meal. The real fear is this: when thousands of acres stay untouched, recovery isn't simple. A season without planting leads to soil degradation, a break in production rhythms the loss of skilled labor, and the unraveling of distribution systems. When farmers walk away, the entire value chain collapses behind them. And the most terrifying part, no one can force them to return, because the damage wasn't to their wallets, it was to their faith. This is no longer scattered frustration. It's a wave, a slow, stubborn protest. Not with banners, but with withheld seeds. Not with shouting, but with silence, steeped in pain. And when enough people make that choice, this nation will feel the weight of a new kind of crisis, one that doesn't make noise, but empties dinner tables more completely than ever before. This is no longer about abandoning the land. It's about abandoning a system that has no room for the small. Look closer when farmers stop planting. It's not just about abandoned fields. It's a painful decision that says there's no place for us anymore. They've been pushed to the very edge of a system where small independent players no longer matter, where they no longer fit. Small farms are no longer seen as vital cogs in a self-sustaining supply chain. Instead, they're viewed as financial burdens if they can't produce quick returns. When input costs rise more than 40%, when crop prices are dictated by corporate contracts, and when support programs are endlessly delayed, everything converges to leave small farms with no option but to step away. America's agricultural model has changed from a robust network of family farms to a hyper-centralized system where large co-ops and multinational corporations control input prices, dominate sales channels, and oversee production protocols. If a small farmer can't deliver short-term profit, they're pushed aside. They lack the leverage to negotiate contracts, the capital to compete, and the bandwidth to fight back. Their fields turn into financial sinkholes that no budget wants to cover. Giving up on planting is not a series of isolated decisions. It's a collective response to a system no longer built for them. They're not swallowing bad policy, they're choking on a market that offers no exit. When foreign supply chains and corporate distributors are willing to take losses just to seize market share, small farms become disposable scaffolding with no place to stand. Some farmers still hold on to hope, but few still believe a field can cover their bills. Their choices are brutal: hold onto the land and wait for new policies, or sell to a corporation. Keep investing only to watch their spirit wear down, or walk away and start over. Many have chosen the latter. This isn't anecdotal. Across 600,000 small farms from Iowa to Maine, 30–40% are actively considering or planning to stop production within the next few years. Not just because of debt, but because they've realized the system isn't built to protect the small. It protects large contracts, consolidated production, and a cold-blooded market logic. When these small farms pull out, the ripple effects don't show up overnight. They show up slowly as local produce disappears, supply chains run dry, agricultural labor is no longer passed on, and rural communities lose schools, corner stores, and doctors. Their children move away. Elders are left with no one to work the land, and in the eyes of the next generation, farming no longer looks like a future. A system that runs without farmers isn't a system, it's a problem. A country needs its small growers to protect diversity, preserve identity, and ensure safe food. When the system only makes space for the biggest and most powerful, it leaves the rest behind. And the scariest part isn't losing chicken or grain, it's losing the feeling that someone still says, "Thank you for feeding America." Every abandoned acre is the scream of the forgotten, "We no longer count." That's not silence, it's action. Or more precisely, inaction as protest. If the system doesn't shift to make room for them, it risks losing the very foundation of sustainable food and the trust of the communities it once relied on. Small farmers aren't just losing land, they're losing their right to exist in the national supply chain. The price won't show up in GDP reports, but it will show up at the dinner table in the collapse of rural life and in a generation that no longer knows where food truly comes from. When a system turns its back on the small, it turns its back on part of America's soul. American farmers don't need to shout. All they have to do is stop, and the system begins to shake. When the fields are no longer green, when meals are no longer cheap, when those who held the land must let go, this is no longer about production. It's a question about the future of the nation. If the very people who once sowed for America now feel forgotten, what does that mean for those who simply rely on grocery shelves? Who truly controls America's food now? And do we still have a say in what ends up on our plates? This video does not promote division or encourage secession. All content is intended to explore, analyze, and open discussion based on real events, emotions, and current social trends. We fully respect the U.S. Constitution and all federal regulations. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss what comes next. The stories mainstream media often overlooks. Everything shared here is based on current data and an independent perspective. It is not intended to predict the future or mislead, only to help our communities reflect and respond before it's too late.